My name's Luke Burridge, I'm a professional juggler, and today I'm going to be breaking down juggling scenes from movies.
This mamushka is for you.
Let's start off with the Addams Family, the mamushka. Now, in this video, we're only going to be looking at scenes where the main characters themselves are doing the juggling, because that's the real challenge for the movie makers. Jugglers are often used in background of establishing shots and party shots, a little bit of action to lead the eye into it, but there you can just get a juggler as an extra. But what do you need to do to make it look as though your main characters are themselves juggling? Even if the actors themselves, maybe they can do 3 balls, but they can't do something as surprisingly difficult and surprisingly dangerous as, say, knife juggling. In this case, 6 knife passing. So what they did in this movie is they brought in body doubles, skill doubles. This is actually the passing zone doing 6 knife juggling here. What makes this really impressive for me as a juggler is that the knives that they're juggling aren't designed for juggling. I perform with knives in my show, but the juggling knives I use are made by a juggling prop manufacturer, and they are weighted to be safe and easy to juggle and to train with, whereas these are designed to look good close up on camera. And when he brings it out and he throws it onto the floor, it sticks into the floor. It's actually sharp. It's got a lot of weight behind it. As a juggler, we would never actually train and perform with these, because it would be too dangerous to perform on stage with people around, and actually just to train as well. You'd never be able to get the skills to do that. So let's go through this clip by clip, and we can see where it's the actors and where it's the professional jugglers doing it. Here, it's of course all the actors. But then you do some fast cutting around to draw the eye away from the dodgy makeup and hair pieces and head pieces, and that the characters change height. So here we go, there's the jugglers, that's the passing zone, and then we cut back to the actors, and then that's the jugglers, close up on the hands, that's back to the actors miming, close up on the hands of the juggling again. She's probably not doing real violin playing. That's the last shot of the jugglers, and then from here on out, it's just the actors and some interesting point of view shots and cutting. You don't show the moment it goes down his throat. I'm not a sword swallower, so I know that's not the angle. It actually has to go down the throat, not back through the back of the head. But if I was a juggler and that was my finale trick, I would be very, very impressed with myself. Of course, it's impossible, that's what they're doing, but it's a great moment in the movie.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal.
Let's have a look at Labyrinth with David Bowie doing some contact juggling, seemingly. Now here's the thing, you can't use fast-paced cuts in this moment to distract the fact that there's a body double doing the juggling, like they did in the Mamushka, because this is a character moment. You've got to see himself being magical, and her looking in his eyes and seeing this. But of course, David Bowie can't do this trick. So instead, parts of this is David Bowie, and parts of this is a professional juggler called Michael Motion, but instead of cutting away from him, they're actually both in the scene at the same time. What they have is a special suit with an arm built up where Michael Motion can put his arm around the side of David Bowie and do the juggling with his arm behind. Now this is very, very difficult because he can't see, Michael Motion can't see what he's doing. David Bowie can see what he's doing, but Michael Motion is doing all of this blind. He's looking down at the floor and just doing it all by feel. And it takes a lot of attempts. I really enjoy the shots of the backstage thing where they're actually just picking out more and more crystal balls from a box on the floor, because it just takes that many attempts. And it looks really good in the end because it's a magical moment, and contact juggling is so magical. And again, what makes this impressive for me as a juggler is that he was doing all of this without being able to see, purely by touch. Of course, you only need to do it once perfectly for the camera, but when that works, it makes a really magical moment in the movie.
Roll the ugliness.
Here's a scene from a movie which comes up in my life surprisingly often. As a professional juggler, when people discover that fact, they often ask me various questions like, how many can you juggle? Or, what can you juggle? Or what have you juggled? Can you juggle fire? Can you juggle knives? And I think this scene from The Jerk from 1979 with Steve Martin, I think this is responsible for the question that people ask me, again, surprisingly often. They say, can you juggle cats? Have you ever juggled cats? And of course the answer is no, I can't. I've never juggled cats, I'll never try to juggle cats, but it must be to do with this scene. And as we can actually see here, turns out Steve Martin has never juggled cats either. because they just use cutting, they do a reaction shot, cut back to him juggling. I'm guessing this is Steve Martin. He's, he does magic and juggling. There's no reason it's not him doing it. But of course, he's not using real cats. He's using, stuffed toy cats. You wouldn't want to actually make it look as though he's really doing cats, because people wouldn't be able to enjoy the comedy of the scene if they think this is actually really happening.
Good.
The movies that we looked at so far have been pretty old, from like the late 70s through the early 90s. I say old because it's before the age of easy access to computer digital effects and to be able to like fix things in post. So everything was filmed real and then quick editing to draw your eye away from the effects. Whereas here we have in 2005, King Kong, directed by Peter Jackson. Now King Kong has a main character here played by Naomi Watts, and the main character is a professional juggler. She performs in vaudeville, and here she is, juggling. You actually see her do some juggling. It establishes her as a juggler, which comes up later on in the movie. But then you actually think, did we really see her juggling there? And it turns out, no, we didn't. They did the same kind of effect. There's some digital effects going on here, like that's not real, that's not a real hat. But then someone passes in front and then it cuts to her actually doing that. That's real. She throws it up, it comes down kind of convincingly, and then they cut away from the moment she actually does the catch. That's okay, I guess. But later on it's important because she has to juggle to distract a massive ape from eating her. And you'd think, oh, she's a professional juggler, we'll see some more juggling here. She does some dancing, she does some backflips and things like that. Probably not her, but again, it works okay, you actually see her doing it. But when we actually then get to the point where she juggles, she's not actually juggling. And you'd think that in the most expensive movie ever made up until this point, you would get some convincing juggling action. I mean, there was jugglers in the movie that we saw, real jugglers early on as extras. She had met some jugglers, they were on the scene. They could have told her what to do with her hands to make it look convincing. And this really annoyed me when I saw this, because this is, like I say, it was the most expensive movie ever made up until that point. The main character is a juggler, and they didn't even tell Naomi Watts, when you mime juggling, do throws and catches. So what they've just done is she's just waggling her hands around, and they put some rocks in, and she does this kick over her head, but we never see anything more of that. Look, it's just waggling hands. Waggling hands this is the motion that you do to say, oh, I'm a juggler, and people go, oh, look, this is juggling. But that isn't actually what juggling is like, and I'm about as impressed by this juggling as King Kong is. Terrible, terrible. The most expensive movie ever made, and they couldn't even get the main character, who is a juggler, to learn any juggling at all before just fixing it in post.
You didn't have to clear your whole day to do all this.
Are you kidding? Of course I did. The perfect maid of honor is with his bride every step of the way.
So, for a main character in a movie to juggle, there has to be a reason that they're juggling. It could be like the Mamushka celebration, it could be that they're a professional juggler, it could be that they don't want to be eaten by a huge ape. But in this movie, the reason why Patrick Dempsey juggles in Maid of Honor is that he wants to impress a girl. Now, I can tell you something from experience, that juggling does not impress the girls. If you do a good show, someone could see your show and be like, ooh, who's this guy? He's good. But just going into a shop and juggling for someone like that, picking things off of the shelf, it never impresses a girl. Just ask my girlfriend. And I tell you something, I have never had a group of people applaud me for juggling in a shop. Like, just look at her eyes. She's like, who is this guy? Well, this guy is, of course, Patrick Dempsey, who can juggle. The easiest way to show someone juggling on screen is if you just get them to juggle. And they can juggle. You don't need special effects. You don't need body doubles. You just need to have someone who happened to be a professional juggler at some point in their life. Patrick Dempsey, when he was a kid, he did some juggling. He said that's how he got out of his small hometown. You can tell he's a real juggler because he's got the lines. His line is, oh, I've not juggled for a while.
I haven't done clubs in quite some time.
And the reason he says that is because if he messes up, he doesn't want people to think, oh, you're not a good juggler. And we all have these lines. All jugglers have these lines like, oh, this is my first time juggling in a while, or the lights are shining in my eyes, or there's a bit of wind, or these aren't my props. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to juggle them. You always kind of set up expectations. So here he is, behind the scenes footage. He obviously took a few different attempts, a few different takes. And what he's doing is actually pretty tricky because when you catch two plates in one hand, they'll smash together and crack together. So you have to do the under the arm catch to stop them cracking together. So he is actually doing some pretty good juggling technique there. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to juggle plates and does a pretty good job there on set. here we have Jackie Chan. It's the ladder fight from First Strike. You may be wondering, what's martial arts doing here? Isn't this meant to be about juggling? Well, here's the thing. Normally when juggling is portrayed in movies, it has to be recognizable, instantly recognizable as juggling to the people seeing it. So you'll just get the basic pattern. It'll be a 3-ball cascade, a 3-cat cascade, a 3-plate cascade, and the basic kind of pattern of what you expect of that object. Whereas here, we see what we as jugglers feel like and do when we juggle for ourselves. Not when we want to say, hey, look at me juggling, but jugglers do tricks. We come up with tricks. We like patterns. We like doing new things. We like coming up with things that nobody has ever done before. And this is what Jackie Chan does here with his scenes. He's actually creating something which nobody has done before. And if you see modern jugglers now at juggling conventions and juggling shows when they're performing for other jugglers, nobody just goes, here's 3 things in a cascade, or here's 6 clubs in a normal 2-count pattern. You actually see things and actions and moves. They get an object and say, what can I do with this object that has never been done before, which includes spinning, throwing, catching, and you explore the properties of the object. All right, this is from Gorgeous, and Jackie Chan is doing pretty much juggling, a juggling routine with other people and these 4 aluminium baseball bats. And of course, he's not always throwing and catching. He does do lots of throwing and catching, and you may think you've got to do more than one object for it to be juggling. But in modern juggling, when you actually see a modern club juggling routine, it's almost indistinguishable from this kind of thing. It'll be someone exploring how the object, the club, or in this case a bat, interacts with the surroundings, interacts with their body, and what they can do using every part of their body to do it. So comparing what Jackie Chan is doing now to, say, Wes Peden, when he juggles 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 clubs, it's the same kind of thing. And when you see someone doing 2-person juggling now, there's a lot of catches and throws, but also grabbing the objects out of the pattern. So seeing these things side by side with a modern club juggling routine, it's almost 1-to-1. And the other thing that we can see from the outtakes, the blooper reels that they always put at the end of the Jackie Chan movies, is Jackie Chan failing over and over and over again. You can see just how many attempts it takes to do this. It's not just like, oh, we'll just do it and fix it in post. It's not like we'll bring a body double in and do it. You actually see time and time again things are going wrong, and that's what we as jugglers experience all the time. For example, there's this one where he kicks the clog out of the air, and then it's over pretty quick. He just kicks it out of the air. How hard was that? Well, you see in the outtakes, time after time, effort after effort. It's just one after the other. He's trying to kick it into the air. And you can see by how many takes it is. I don't know how many it takes, but it was at least, what's that? At least 45 takes to get that thing where he throws it up, kicks it out of the air at the other person. And that's what we as jugglers experience. We experience trying and trying and failing, and more importantly, coming up with new tricks and new patterns and things that nobody has ever done before. And Jackie Chan represents jugglers, or what it feels like to juggle, more in movies than any other juggling clip you'll see, where people are actually just doing the 3-ball cascade or the 3-plate cascade. So that's it. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed that rundown, and if you enjoyed this one, please consider supporting me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Luke Burridge if you enjoyed this movie and would like to see more things like this in the future. And please subscribe to the channel and like this video. You know the score. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.